Today's CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs are mostly not aware of or prepared for the devastation possible from a run in with the system. And history proves that if we are successful long enough, it's not a question of if, but when. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because many of us are one step away, one small misstep away from life turning on a dime. And today's guest knows all about it. Through a sometimes shocking, sometimes emotional rise to the mountaintop and devastating fall from grace, today's guest will open your eyes to what could happen to any business leader, and most importantly, how to better prepare.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Jeff Martinovich, a Gulf War veteran who founded a billion-dollar wealth management firm. Jeff experienced regulatory scrutiny and allegations following the 2008 financial crisis. As CEO, he vigorously defended his firm, refusing 3 separate plea deals and offers, and instead chose to defend his employees and himself in federal court, resulting in a 14-year sentence. Teaching himself federal criminal law, reversing the court order 5 times, and removing 2 federal judges. After nearly 7 years, Jeff was finally released to begin his journey of rebuilding, restoring, and turning disadvantages into advantages. His perilous journey and miraculous restoration are part of his new book, When, Not If, A CEO's Guide to Overcoming Adversity. It was published by Forbes Books and just recently came out, I believe, 26th of January. Anyway, happy to have you with us. And you are a newly minted member of the Pocket Sized Pep Talk Two-Timer Club. There's only 3 of you, by the way.
That's to date, that is my greatest honor. No doubt about that.
Welcome
I've been
back to the
bragging to all
show.
my friends this week.
That's right. Well, welcome back. And it is a pleasure to have you with us. And you should feel pretty good because I think we're at 330 podcasts now. So
Wow.
you're in a club of 3. And you're there, Jeff, because I really appreciated a year and a half ago when we sat down, and you were like an open book and taught us a lot. So now we have a book. So I always say a book finds you. So let's start there. It's a random Tuesday. As you said,
Oh,
the Black Swan shows up. What happened?
yes. Well, again, we were so lucky. I was so lucky to build this large firm and a bunch of people and zillion clients and all that. And yes, on a random Tuesday, I was asked to participate in a beta test audit exams with all the regulators because they were trying to make them more efficient, do it all at one time. And as I've learned now, one of the dumbest business decisions I've made, and I've made a lot of dumb ones. And so it became this fishing expedition post 2008 crisis. And a friend of mine inside the SEC even called me up and said, hey, post Bernie, they're going to find something here and da da da. So but the whole time I was just very naive, very open because when you do something bad, you have this like pit of your stomach feeling, or those things. And so I just never thought any of us did, or I did, or anything. So I just kept resisting that. And when they tried to say we mispriced one stock in one of our hedge funds, which was 0.02% of our assets, it was so far off my radar screen that the whole thing just didn't seem to make sense. But that was the times. And what I was not a great leader was to see around corners and be able to see what the underlying issues were here, and that they were shutting down a great number of firms. So I did refuse everything. I had a little duty honor country moment, coming from the Air Force Academy. My son was going off to college. I will say, I'm one of the very rare percentage of people that decides to go to trial against the federal government, and for good reason. But, if I had small kids at the time, I certainly couldn't do that. My son was going off to college. My father and my son, we all powwow that, it's just one of those life existential moments that I decided I needed to take a stand for what we believed was right. And it was 5 weeks of me trying to explain hedge fund accounting to a jury of very incredible citizens in Newport News, Virginia, and them taking 5 weeks of every day putting up pictures of my automobiles and my homes and flying in the Bellagio blackjack pit boss to say how much we gambled on our golf trips, and I was toast. And so I got eventually sentenced to 14 years in prison. More than most violent murderers out there today, unfortunately. And I had to teach myself federal criminal law. I got a job in the law library, started helping about 300 other inmates, which in turn helped me greatly. Was able to send in over 500 motions with a number 2 pencil and a manual typewriter, and was very crazy fortunate to reverse the decisions many times, get down to a camp, get home for COVID, and get back to my life now. And that was almost 4 years ago. And it has my family and business and the books. I mean, it's just been miracle after miracle for that. So I truly, through all this, believe I am the luckiest human on planet Earth.
Wow. Wow. That's you're you're like that one-legged dog. Can't see it, like named Lucky, but I want to tell you, I am it's almost moving to hear you say that because you actually said that twice about how lucky you were as you described what many of us would
Yes,
describe as a very unfortunate circumstance. And Jeff, you're not
correct.
alone actually. You're in another club, and that is it seems like people who have gone through adversity, the ones that really come out healthy, will immediately tell you how lucky they were.
I totally
Yeah,
believe that. Everybody has problems. I was in the Air Force, and so many people went over to Iraq and Afghanistan and, did not come back and have all these great injuries. In my situation, no one died.
right.
So, we have to put things into perspective. And I think the universe gives us these unbelievable challenges once or twice in our life, and that's all part of the journey. That's just kind of how I had to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. But the problem is some people, fall into that victim side, which would have eaten you up, Jeff. And we
Right.
see that in people that didn't take the fall that you took, but that continue to sort of generate that the plumber, is it did all this and I didn't do anything. The principal at the school with my kids are terrible. We didn't do anything. The neighbors, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. We didn't do anything. I refer to it as sort of being a professional victim, and it's a terrible way to live your life.
Yeah, it's quite a culture today.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna join the How Lucky I Am club just because you've inspired me. I actually am lucky. I think I was 23 and I got audited by the government, and because I was really scraping by, I had a whole bunch of ventures. One, I bought a condo. The deal fell out on another one. I ended up with two. The numbers just didn't look good. But when I got audited, my accountant said, "Listen, you're okay, but it got flagged because it's hard to live the way you're living. Let's just give them something." And I said, so,
Yes.
so we're going to make something up. He said, yeah, we're actually going to make something up, give them something small, and get this behind us. And Jeff, I said no. I said no.
Oh, you're the only other
Uh,
person in the country.
I just want to, they went back 5 years, okay? And this was back in like 1989 or something, okay? Where I had to
Yeah.
get microfiche and all sorts of stuff to show them
Oh,
everything. And when it was all over and I had paid, 10 times as much in accounting fees,
yes.
I
Yes.
learned at 23. Okay, there's the principal side of Rob, and I want that to be preserved. And then there's the intelligence side, which is this would, if I could go back, I'm not a victim. I just wouldn't have handled it that way. I said, all right, what do we got to give them? But I'm going to
Right.
come off this horse.
And that's such a great story because I'm so conflicted with that even 12 years later. And
Hmm.
I think about that almost every day because we have the great opportunity now to help a lot of companies. And and I've almost moved from being the cheerleader, naive cheerleader, to the grouchy old grandpa telling them they can't do this or this. But I get to ask this question so many times, would you make those same decisions? And I want to say yes. Even knowing all the pure hell that it went through, not for me, just me, but so many stakeholders, I want us to think that, hey, our journey here on the planet is not to make $1 billion. The journey is, to have this incredible life. So if you happen to have this life review at the end of the deal, it's a great story. So that is such a thing as you do such a great job training and consulting for business owners and all these big corporations. What's the right answer? What's the right mix? It's a really hard answer.
It is.
It
And
is.
onto that, Jeff, and it's slightly different, but I see so many people that I work with people who are in career transition, and frequently they're just not fitting into the team. They're not fitting with the manager. And one of the stumbling blocks is they get confused. They don't know when to be wrong when they know they're right. We don't learn it in school. Nobody teaches us. And what's worse is sometimes we think that would be weakness. I don't want to be a person of
Right.
moral weakness. And it's not, Jeff. It's strength, actually. Look, I'm not going to
Yes.
back off of certain things, never. But
Yeah.
I was raised by a Marine myself, and
I love it.
it was almost cowardice to back away from something when you know you're right. Well,
Right.
just where are we? Where are we politically? Do I
Right.
really want to make a stand here? And I think,
Yeah.
it plagues a lot of people because what book do you learn that from?
Yeah. Rob, that is so interesting. I've been so overwhelmed with the response of our book, and I get all these emails from these people. I have no idea who they are, and it's mostly about that we were vulnerable to be able to say, hey, here's the 40 mistakes I made. And my mission for the next 20 years, my main mission is I want to help all these other CEOs, business leaders, corporate managers to not make the mistakes I made when this black swan showed up. And
Right.
so I could have done so many things differently. And it is interesting that that's what I think attracts people much more than, telling some crazy story because they see, okay, man, I see this guy did make all these mistakes, and shoot, the greatest thing they could do is learn, to take some actionable takeaways to not do 20 of those.
Yeah. I was just talking about this recently, but as a kid, I remember watching The Wizard of Oz, and
Love the
Dorothy
best.
finally makes it after being almost burned, killed, liquidated, you name it. They'd almost happened to her. Monkeys, the whole thing. And, good old Glinda shows up in her little bubble and says,
Yep.
well, I could have sent you back long ago, but you needed to learn this. And I remember at 5 years old going, what the hell? I think I believe he said hell. We had to
That's
go through.
right.
Why don't we just tell them, And
I
if she
know.
doesn't want to listen, send her into the forest,
Well, as lieutenants in the Air Force, we were taught to listen to the generals so we didn't make all the same mistakes, et cetera, or have to do ourselves. And, that's kind of my mission now to show people how this stuff works because I was so on Pluto, I had no idea this could even happen.
Yeah.
And so I think if you can give people a feel for what might happen to them on Tuesday, and unfortunately, the more successful you get, the greater the odds that you're going to go through something like this because you're more of a target, you're more of a bigger dollar. But I think everybody else out there has no idea this could happen.
Yeah. All right. So let's go there. How does it
Okay.
take us through a couple of preparations? How does a leader prepare for, this at some point potentially happening? What do we do proactively?
That's a great point. Gosh, there's so many. Um,
Hey.
you know, just to think of a couple of them off the top of my head is, like the military does war gaming for here's every bad scenario that could ever happen. I built this firm from dirt, uh, basically by being, crazy Tony Robbins positive and all these things and trying to be smarter than everybody else and do better than everybody else. But what I never did is look at, oh my gosh, here's all the terrible things that could happen. We rely on attorneys and accountants to do it, but they have their own lives and they have their own careers. So we have to take personal responsibility. I signed a million forms without reading the forms. I never, as we got bigger, I never changed from personal guarantees on the business that I could have easily taken off and protected my own family and many stakeholders. There are so many things that I offered to do to help, the industry and these regulators that was really out of narcissism
Mm.
and, me wanting to be the big shot in the industry.
Yeah.
So the list is so long in the book. All these things that when I go back, that, whether anybody did anything wrong or not in the company, if I had done better on all these other things, we could have maybe saved the golden goose.
Yeah. The book is When, Not If, a CEO's Guide to Overcoming Adversity. And I'm hearing you. I'm assuming we've got a checklist or a list of them in this book that you've written.
In the book, and again, Ford has published this, and they gave me a writer to help correct all my terrible grammar and spelling. So it's really, they did a nice job getting it format, but it does segment, for the CEO brain, as we scan these business books, they have segmented all these lessons. Plus, at the end of the book, I made an extra appendix like, hey, if you just want to look at the lessons, here's a quick list of it. So it really goes through telling all the stories and the narrative. But as you know, 100 times better than I do, is humans learn best through stories. And Tony Robbins, everybody teaches all these principles through real life stories. And unfortunately, there are so many real life stories that we were able to put in the book, but they teach the lesson through the real life story. So we found that people find it real entertaining and pretty emotional, kind of a lot of highs and lows. But at the end of the day, they were able to take away the lessons that I wanted to convey that I wish somebody had told me.
Yeah. Well, then home run, because what you're talking about is implementation. And from whether I'm reading a book or taking a training class, there's being inspired and motivated and entertained, which is lovely. And then there's actually learning and implementing.
You don't have to do it again next year.
Exactly. I mean, we're here today, so we don't make that same mistake twice. So,
That's right.
And from a training perspective, what you have at the back of your book, what we would call a job aid, something that we could take and kind of put up somewhere and eyeball, because I can't put up 200 pages and eyeball it. So
Right.
kudos to you. That's a smart way of helping somebody not just be entertained, but actually
Yeah.
walk away with some knowledge that they can apply. That's a good book. That's
Thank you.
what we
Thank
do.
you. I had a lot of really smart people helping me put that together.
Well, it sounds like it. We had a copy editor, by the way. You sell yourself short. I had a writer. We just so I write what's in my head. People say, "Boy, it sounds like you're sitting there right next to me," and it does, which means I need a
That's,
copy editor to clean it up a little bit
yeah,
because
that's
I
right.
can get
I
a little
would,
too loose.
for about a year, I would climb up the stairs at 5 a.m. before going to my day job and create a draft. And then they would help us. We go back and forth. So it was a really fascinating process. And I just feel incredibly lucky to have gone through it.
Good, good, good. Well, you had, like I said, you had a good copy editor. Sometimes there are editors that will really work on getting your authentic voice out there, and
Right.
that's valuable too.
And then, as you know, they give a audio book, and they let you pick the person, and that was so much fun. And we ended up having this gentleman Stewart, Sky is his name. And it's so fascinating to listen to him read the book on Audible and Barnes and Noble and all that, because it's pretty impressive how those people do that.
Well, I actually read my own.
Oh, do you
I
really? Oh,
do.
super.
I do. So if you
That's a
get
great
another one, let
way.
me twist your arm a little bit. I've spoken to you enough where you've got some energy. I would do that. But I tell you a 30-second funny story about one of my
Yeah.
Audible books. I dedicated it to my dad. He was a big member of the Lions Club, and he
Oh,
was the
yeah.
King Lion and all this stuff. So it says in the very beginning, I want to dedicate this book to the man who taught me everything I know, and the man who taught me this and that, and what morality was. Lion Lee Jollis, and which looks good in print, Jeff. But when you
Yeah.
hear it in an audiobook, they think, well, I'm not out of this guy's dedication. And he's dedicated to a guy who lies a lot, because he's Lion Lee Jollis. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
I had
my
to.
gosh, terrible.
My dad's no longer with us, but I know his sense of humor. I know he was smiling, but
You get a
probably
joke
go,
out about
oh,
that.
that one didn't come out audibly as well as we wanted. Anyway, back into your story. I had to sneak that in a little bit. Big question for you. I mentioned to you, that King Lion, Lion, Lee Jollis, was big into don't give ground up. We Marines don't go
Right.
backwards. Okay. We
Right.
go forwards.
No one
And
better
yet,
than the Marines.
yeah. And yet there's this line of when to back off and when to not back off.
I
From your
know.
perspective, when do you make and maybe this is an impossible question, but is there something that you use that would help people of when you might want to make a stand and when you might want to just let that one go?
Yes. I of course for the last 12 years think about that every day. In the book, I actually talk about remember in Shawshank Redemption when he comes in for to get parole the last time, and
Yeah.
he says, I'd like to talk to that young man and talk some sense into him.
Yeah.
And I think yes, one of my things of wisdom, hopefully, that I've learned through this is, I was a 5'9" Division I point guard, and the only way I made that scholarship was by, being meaner, faster, trying harder than everybody else because they were all a foot taller than me and had much better athletic ability. And so I think the way I say it is, I'd like to speak to the guy with the chip on the shoulder and tell him, maybe every once in a while I need to compromise and you know, take the cards off the table and have your marbles to play for another day. So yes, I took this big stand and I can't really honestly say how much of that is duty, honor, country, feeling about the right thing to do, how much of that is ego, how much of that is not wanting to admit something wrong or you blew it as a leader. And so, yes, I think there's a big thing, and that I think it comes with a little bit of age, but it also comes with a lot of experience. And so, as I help other CEOs right now, and we have a portfolio of 12 companies that I help confuse all day, and I like to tell them like, hey, here's how I handle this, but I would probably now handle it like this. And so I think you're right. Hard times make strong people, weak times make weak people, all that time.
Yeah.
Easy times make weak people. So yeah, I think people like you and me who have been around the block a little bit in the business world, I just think it adds a great value. So our job is to really help young guys or people who haven't had those challenges to do it a better way. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to go through that forest,
Right.
dodging crazy monkeys and insane witches.
Right.
There's
Right.
people here that have been there and done that. Open up
Yes.
your ears.
Yeah.
We do share a lot, Jeff. First of all, I was a point guard myself, uh,
I
and
love that.
I stand a robust 5'10" when I really
It
stand up
really
straight
stand as much
and
taller than
lie a
me.
little bit. But But I was the same way, show me a good loser, I'll show you a loser. It was just, I don't know how you play basketball at a higher level at 5'10" without a
Right.
chip on your shoulder, quite frankly. And
Exactly.
one of my mantras, Jeff, was always, it always started with this tombstone. I think I'm going to put on my tombstone. This kid never backed away. This kid, and to your point, I love that phrase because I remember the exact scene in the book. I wish I could go back and talk to him. I can't, but I wish I could. I wish I could go
Yeah.
back and talk to myself also and say,
Right.
forget about the tombstones right now. Hey, is
Yeah.
this in the best interest of the company, of the team, or are
Right.
you just locked in on your ego right now?
Right.
Because if
The
this is
hardest
gonna,
part,
you go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. The hardest part of the regret and the remorse, and what happens in the world of the system and the federal government is if you defend yourself, you're constantly labeled as no remorse, no regret, no guilt, because 98% of people plead guilty and take a plea deal. And that is such a misnomer, and it's such a crime to do that, because if you defend yourself and you want to get out in those things, the only way you can fix something is by fixing it. Crying, writing crazy letters of emotions and things, that doesn't help anybody. That just maybe makes you release your own guilt. And so I think in the world of our system, the way it's set up, we need to fix it. So if we mess up, regardless of how it happened, who happened, whatever, it is our job as a leader to do everything humanly possible to fix it. And so that's where I really think, because the worst part is when you kill the golden goose, the shareholders, the employees, the investors, all those kinds of things collide, and it's terrible for so many. And so I still have this great hope. We've made such tremendous progress so far. I can't believe it. But at the end of the day, if we could restore all those stakeholders in MICG2, whatever we call that, I really believe it is possible. And I really believe we will do it. And when I was sleeping on a metal bunk for all those years, I would envision a 60 minutes TV show of, oh my God, here's this incredible story that it went through, this incredible fire, and it took forever. It took a long time, but eventually everybody was restored. And these stories in America, there's so many great Americans who have the factory burned down, but the owner kept paying all the people. And I mean, there's just so many inspiring stories.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is turn it into one of those. It's going to take a while, and it's a hell of a lot of work, but I really believe we're going to do it.
Well, spoken like a true leader, my friend. All right, let me throw this at you though.
Okay.
Uh, and a famous author named you once said that if you can manage your business and your life as if every single call, text, and email will eventually be in front of regulators or potentially a jury. All right, love it. But that requires a lot of discipline. Uh,
Yes.
how do you stay focused on that real quick? Because a lot of us can operate in what's called an unconscious incompetent state, which means if I'm conscious of it, Jeff, makes sense. But usually when
Right.
I'm screwing up, I
Right.
forget that I'm screwing up.
That's so great. Well, again, since all this challenge, and I'm helping these other companies, and in today's world, with we're all on text and email and Slack and you name it. Well, these management executives will fire off jokes and or mean thoughts, and all of these things. And all I can always remember, like, oh my God, this is going to be one of the 800,000 emails that the regulators request. So the regulators requested from us 800,000 emails,
Mm.
and then they lost all of them, and then they asked our IT team to put them together again. So I'm spending zillions on the IT department, of course, and called us and they had a stack of 100 manila folders with one email printout in each one. And they go, hey, we want to ask you about this. What do you think this person meant when they sent this email? And of course, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is like the Wall Street Journal, and some investment banker drinking at night said some horrific thing. Now, so I was scared to death. Actually, the way it worked out is there wasn't one of those emails that I felt uncomfortable with or I thought was inappropriate or anything. So I was so incredibly relieved. But today, in all our business activities, I see it all the time. And I think, God, if they only knew how the world is structured today, and not to get political, but with the State Department and NSA and in the corporate and prosecutors, they have access to every single little thing you do, and they're listening every day. So you have to just take a breath and think, first of all, we shouldn't be being mean and wrong and inappropriate anyway. But we really have to think as leaders, especially CEOs, business owners, you are being watched so far that think about 4 years from now, if that's in front of a regulator, prosecutor, a jury, how are you going to be judged? And I think if you kind of just get that mindset going, you're still going to make a bunch of mistakes, but you get better at it. You get better at it. Ashley, my beautiful bride, says, why do you write every text or write every email and then read it 2 times before you send it? It's like driving me crazy. And I say, this is why.
Yeah. Spend some time on a metal cot. I suppose this is
that'll
why.
keep your brain focused.
Sorry. I'm so glad that you can smile about that.
It's okay.
It's horrific for me even to make that joke. But
No,
thanks
no,
for
you
putting up
have to
with me.
joke. If you have to joke about it. It's the only way to be positive.
Well, you look like a very healthy human being to me, and we've spoken on and off the air. So the man walks the walk here. Okay, coming down the home stretch, and again,
Yes,
when
sir.
not if, the CEO's Guide to Overcoming Adversity. That's the name of the book. This audience knows when they buy a book, they read a book. When they read a book, they write a review on the book. So let's not forget that. And we'll
Thank you
remind you
so
about
much.
that. You bet. No, I wish people would understand from an author's perspective. If you just felt like, hey, I feel like doing a random act of kindness, not kindness to buy the book, but buying the book is you're listening to a man go over things. You can go through that forest, or you can listen right
Hopefully
now before we
saves
take
you
our
a
walk
billion
down the yellow brick
dollars.
road. Yeah. Uh, but what people don't realize is just how meaningful it is to an author for someone
Yeah.
to write a review. 2 sentences, 3 sentences. Actually, we really don't want you to write "We Walk on Water." It's not really a great review. Just what did the book say to you? What was one thing that
Rob,
you got
that's
from it?
such a great point. I mean, in the morning when I still tiptoe up the stairs at 5 a.m., uh, it's very emotional for me to read the reviews about what it meant to people and stuff.
Yeah,
And I mean, I'm blown away. When you write a book, and you've done so much better than me, you have no idea how it's going to be kind of received or perceived, because we're living this journey. Maybe somebody thinks like, I can't believe this. But when you get all this incredible feedback, it's unbelievable. I mean, I
yeah,
get so emotional almost every morning.
yeah, yeah.
I'll read it. So I do appreciate it so much.
You and me both. People will ask, "What's the best thing about writing a book?" And to me, the best thing of writing a book is hearing from an individual randomly. Sometimes it's after a keynote, a seminar,
Yeah.
it's a review, it's something. It is. I'm the same as you. It's very touching. Trust me when you hear us go, "Thank you very much." It means a great deal to us.
It
We're not
does.
kidding. Yeah. Sometimes
Yeah.
we'll be like, well, please, I'm only human. But believe me, inside our knees are knocking and we're going, I'm so glad you came up.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. What a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's the best part of it. I still think.
I
And
think you're
just one
right.
last thing, but I'm going to remind you when you do a keynote, get those people that are bringing you in to get a book for everybody. and sign
Yes.
for everybody, because
Yeah.
nothing makes an audience happier when I start a keynote and say, "Oh, one more thing, you're all getting books, yay!" And I signed every single one of them. It's the most fun thing I can do, and
I
there's a
love it.
hoo-ha
I
because
love it.
three people will come up afterwards, and two of them are nervous to even ask. What you don't know
Oh,
is we're dying to sign the book, so come on up
yeah,
if you want. But don't ever feel like you're putting an author out to help sign a book. That's
totally.
what we were dreaming about for 5 months while we were writing the daggone thing.
Totally. Totally. I agree. I agree.
All right, last question for you. How do
Yes,
you
sir.
protect your family and your personal life from these types of situations? And to me, my little junior, again, remember, I learned my lesson through an accounting issue. I
Yeah.
also learned from my lawyer when I was, 31 or whatever I was when I first went into business of you're
Yeah.
getting incorporated. And you're
Yeah.
getting incorporated so we can separate the corporation from the family. That's all I
Right.
know. Build on that if you would.
Right. And again, another great topic that I only know because I made more mistakes than anyone. And I think it was just the naivety of always like winning. So you don't think about the alligators. And so I think what you have to do is have this mindset, like we talked about at the very beginning. What's could go wrong? And so once you get in that mindset, and again, it's very an antithesis to like our great A, we're gonna go crush the world. So we have to stop and think about that, especially as the dollars get bigger. Like, not to go into all the details today, but a lot of it is in the book on, like I talked about personal guarantees and setting, we had all these trusts and, all these tax saving strategies and all the right things you're supposed to do. It's so embarrassing because I spent 20 years, advising everybody else on all these things to do. And I never got around to doing it for myself and my family. And I just have tremendous guilt for that every day. Doing more sophisticated, irrevocable trusts where if the worst things happen, at least your family is okay.
Yeah.
There's so many sophisticated strategies that I just never got to that, signing these things in corporate, signing these things in personal, and really setting up cash flows. And, I had this insane second to die whole life insurance policy on me, like a lot of people do as a buyout for a large company. But again, when overnight your zillions of dollars of income comes to a screeching halt and you have this tremendous amount of bills to pay, all those things start to go away. You can't pay those premiums. Everything crashes. Um, Also, I should have paid off all this debt that I didn't need because I had the money. But, so there's a really long list. It's all very, there's no rocket science there. It's all very logical. And I do list a lot of that in the book, that I just wish that other CEOs, entrepreneurs, those YPO guys, the EO guys say, holy crap, this could happen to me on Tuesday. So I got to get my act together and I got to get off the treadmill and take a day to do this and those kinds of things. And I just hope people protect themselves. And again, every time I say protect themselves, I mean, of course, their family, but also their shareholders
Mhm.
and their employees. And there's so many stakeholders. Like in Virginia, we supported, every charity known to mankind. So we, every weekend we're running the 5Ks and Big Brothers Big Sisters, and we're at this black tie. So when a company like this gets destroyed, not only the couple of owners hurt, it's a huge community that loses all of that support. And that's just the most terrible part of this, the people, the employees, the community, the charities. So I really do believe that my mission is to help all these people do it better than I did so that all those other people can be saved.
Yeah. A life well lived. That's, what a beautiful thing to do with the experience that you went through. You could have come out of that bitter. You could have just turned the page and retreated. You are not a guy who retreats.
Well,
That we're learning. Uh, I'll tell
I
you
guess
something.
not.
I'll tell you something else, just again, humbly from my side. When people ask me who's the most important person in your business, I always say the accountant. And the
Right,
first time I went in, when I first started, I found a nice, inexpensive accountant. And, 5 fines later, I went, why am I saving money on an accountant?
right,
And I think it's one of the
right.
most important people that you work with, but they have to
I
be
think you're right.
competent. Uh,
Definitely.
and you had to have an accountant that knows the sophistication of what you were doing. I'm on a different planet there, but still they need to know what I'm doing, or
Correct.
we wind up in trouble because. Uh, and I'm not going to write this book, but I've always loved the term instinct versus logic. What you're laying out is very logical, Jeff, but it's not instinctive. And that's why
Yes.
a book like this and a conversation like this is
I
so
think that's a
important.
great idea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
I
all
want
right, my
to
man.
I want to write the foreword.
Okay. You
I
know what? You might just do that. I think you've got quite
could be the guy.
you could be the guy.
Hey, let me tell you one
Yeah,
thing, Rob. Let me
yeah,
tell you one last thing
yeah, man.
is when I got home, um, 7 years early, 7 years late, um, my friends from the Air Force Academy flew out, gave me 1,000 projects to work on, and Brian Redines is a guy who's a CEO of a company in San Diego, and he wrote the foreword of our book. And because when these kind of things happen, your friends are like, "Oh my God, did they do something terrible?" And because you believe, why would this be happening? And that's kind of the mindset of the country, although it is kind of shifting right now, that if the government's prosecuting these people, they must have done terrible
Right.
things. And so that, but to their credit, this fantastic group of friends um, did their own research, did their own due diligence, and stuck with us through this whole journey. Like I can't even describe. And the worst part is so many people don't have that support group and family and friends and unbelievable people. But I'd love, if you haven't had a chance, I'd love for you to read the story from Brian Redines in the foreword about how oh man, he's like 100 times more successful than I was, and how he kind of got thrown into this spider web of like, oh my God, can't even believe this kind of stuff could happen. Um, so I think that's good. And actually, on the speaking circuit, if we can ever get 1/100th of the success that you have and get out there, he wants to join for everyone to try to tell people these stories. So I also think I just want to thank those guys who are just the kind of guys that are in the trenches with you
Yeah.
and are loyal to the end. And they're just the highest integrity people on planet. And without all of them, none of this would be possible.
Well, you took my last question, which was great because I usually sometimes, not always, but finish with mentors or people. So it's interesting that you're just naturally going there. Listen, there's a
That's the most important.
absolutely, there's a lot of characteristics, but if you ever met my friends, it's the most eclectic ragtag group of people, and you go, that nobody seems to have any connection with the other one. What are all these
Right.
people doing here? And I tell him, and I'll tell people, they're all loyal. They're all
Yes.
loyal, and
Yes.
loyalty carries the day for me. You don't have to
And
be the best looking or the smartest or whatever you think. I know you're loyal. It's meaningful to me. And that's a lesson for people listening, which is
it is a
you
huge thing.
you
And Rob, I
really,
want you to
yeah,
one day, hopefully soon, to meet my beautiful wife, Ashley, because she came to see me every month for 7 years, driving 7 hours to Fort Dix, New Jersey, going through pure hell in 4,000, very violent place. And I mean, loyalty is like her middle name. And that's why I have the opportunity to today work with my son, Cole, who's 29. Every day sits right next to me. It's like the greatest miracle on the planet. Yeah. And raise our 2-year-old little girl, Carly. So it's just crazy.
It is crazy. That will save for the 3-timer club. Listen, I really appreciate the conversation. I want you to know that I refuse to have a publicist or author send me books, mainly because if I really like the story, I want to buy the book because I want to provide a verified review. I'm getting your book. I'll read that forward, and you'll see a verified review by me.
Thank you, sir. Really that is so kind of you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you, Jeff. I do. It's life is not what happens, but what you do with what happens. And yours is a very rich life, and it's in a very unique way. So,
well, Rob, you do an amazing job, and we are huge fans of everything. So, I'd love to support whatever mission you're doing, and all myself and all of us want to support that because there's huge knowledge there.
Thank you. Grateful for that. Anyway, thank you so much for being on. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.